very quickly running up on constraints on energy where we can build new energy projects for data centers on Earth. And in space, we have access to almost unlimited low-cost energy in the form of solar. There's about to be a $75 billion injection of capital into SpaceX in the IPO, and then probably a $400-500 billion capital outflow from SpaceX. All of that capital is going to go back into the space industry.
Philip Johnston, CEO and founder of Starcloud, is joining me at the FII Institute TV studio today. Welcome, Philip.
Thanks so much for having me.
Data centers in space. Not long ago, it sounded like something out of a science fiction film.
Yeah.
But today it's reality. Can you tell us about Starcloud and what you're doing?
For sure. So Starcloud is building orbital data centers, mainly because we're very quickly running up on constraints on energy where we can build new energy projects for data centers on Earth. So we launched our first spacecraft in November last year. That's the first spacecraft to have an NVIDIA H100 on board. It's about 100 times more powerful GPU or AI compute than has been in space before. And with that, we were the first to train a model in space. We were the first to run a version of Gemini and do high-powered inference on imagery in space. And now we're ramping up. So next year or later this year, we're going to be launching our second spacecraft. It's about 100 times more powerful than the first one. And the ambition is to build very large constellations of many tens of gigawatts of compute, all powered by the sun.
Is this to address the big problem of lack of infrastructure that will feed our need for energy?
Exactly. So we're very quickly running out of places we can build new energy projects for powering AI. And in space, we have access to almost unlimited low-cost energy in the form of solar. And so this is exactly, as you say, to address that.
Space economy is a big topic these days, even here in Miami. What can you tell us about where we are right now?
Yeah, I mean, Florida is the global capital of launch. We launched our first spacecraft from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station down just a few hours north from here. I mean, I think it's going to be a booming industry here because you've got SpaceX is building the 2 new launch pads for Starship in Florida. You've got New Glenn from Blue Origin building a launch pad in Cape Canaveral. You've also got Stoke Space building a launch pad in Cape Canaveral. So I think it's going to be a growing portion of the economy in Florida.
You mentioned SpaceX. Do you feel that since Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and his big names are in the space economy, there is more interest in it?
For sure. I mean, we wouldn't exist as a company without SpaceX. We launched on the rideshare program. It's a massive reduction in cost than other variants of launch. And yeah, they're having their names in the conversation definitely adds to the credibility. For example, but when we launched 2 years ago, we told everyone we were going to build data centers in space. A few sort of diehard fans believed us, but most people thought it was crazy. Since Elon's really put his name behind it, people are taking the concept much more seriously because he has such an incredible track record of executing and delivering. So it's definitely helpful for the conversation.
What are still the biggest challenges you're facing?
The 2 biggest technical challenges with building data centers in space are, number one, how do we get rid of the heat in a vacuum? So how can we, normal data centers, you would flow water or cold air past the chips and then that goes out. You can't do that in space or you can't use that to dissipate the heat by evaporation. So what you need to do is flow coolant past the chips and then out to a very large deployable radiator. So about 70% of our engineering team is working on building a very large low cost and low mass deployable radiator. And then the second main challenge is how do we make sure these chips are just as reliable in the high radiation space environment as they are terrestrially. And so for that, it's just a lot of testing in different particle accelerators, testing different variants of shielding architectures and others to make sure they're going to be reliable.
Where does policy and regulation come in when we talk about space? Who regulates the business activities in space?
It's a great question because it's slightly unintuitive. So things like orbital debris mitigation, the orbital slots are allowed to take up as a constellation operator. All of that is actually regulated by the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. They mainly regulate spectrum licensing. That's, communications was initially, and that's a hangover from the fact that almost all satellites in the past were purely for communications.
Where do you see the investment pools shifting when we talk about space economy?
Yeah, certainly in the last, even the last 2 days, there's been a big shift towards the moon.
With NASA's announcement.
Yeah, with Jared Isaacman announcing the big $20 billion investment in quick and rapid deployment of assets on the lunar surface. So that I think is going to be a big driver of investment over the coming years.
Do you feel this shows America's commitment to win that race, to win that space race?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it absolutely demonstrates America's willingness to invest heavily and win that race.
So we know there is a race between China and the USA. Where is Europe in all of that?
It depends how polite I'm expected to be. Europe is not really playing a particularly significant role right now in the space economy. They had the Ariane rockets, but there's been many delays and cost overruns on developing the latest version of that. So I mean, right now they're launching a very insignificant portion of satellites and manufacturing a very insignificant portion of satellites. So as of now, not really a very relevant player.
What do you think is the problem? Policy or capital or a list of things?
Capital is definitely one of the reasons. And I mean, Europe has structurally a slight problem in that it's fragmented much more than the US is. And so it can't pull resources on one project because they have to distribute the spending of capital among every different country, which just slows and delays everything by a huge amount.
How did you personally get into space?
I've been interested in space since I was a kid.
Like most kids are, but
Yeah.
many end up working it.
Yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut like everyone else. And then actually I spent a bit of time with McKinsey, the consulting firm in the Middle East. And there was some projects related to the space agencies of the UAE and Saudi government. And that's where I started to notice that the launch cost was about to drop very rapidly when we have reusability on rockets. So about 3 years ago, actually, I went down to Starbase, Texas, where SpaceX is building their new Starship rocket. I was just very inspired by the scale of these Starship gigafactories they're building. I mean, the amount of capacity that's going to come online in the next 3 to 5 years is just unbelievable. Yeah.
So where do you see space will be the biggest game changer? I've had today a few topics, of course, the data centers, energy, but then also food security.
The biggest industries in space will be, in rough order, in my estimation of the timeline of them, will be communications. So that's Starlink and its competitors. Then it will be what we're doing, which is space data centers. And the reason we'll be next is because we don't need to re-enter a product. So it's actually much cheaper than many other things. Then there'll be lunar habitats and tourism, low Earth orbit hotels, lunar hotels, things like that. Manufacturing in space for very niche applications will be after that, and so that's for things where it's helpful to do with with microgravity, like crystals. Over time, we'll start manufacturing things where we care about the energy, and so that can be refining of asteroid materials, refining of lunar materials, and for that will be the last business, which is resource mining and utilization in orbit.
But what time scale are we talking about? Are we talking about 5 years, 10 years, more?
So the communications business has already produced the largest market cap company in the world, in my opinion. When SpaceX goes public, it will be the largest market. Maybe it will have several $1 trillion of market cap. The space data center business will be as soon as Starship is flying frequently, which is sort of 3-year time frame. That's when this starts to ramp up. Actually, Starship is really the big unlock, or low-cost launch is really the big unlock for many of these businesses. So after that, that's when we can really start working and iterating quickly on low Earth orbit habitats. I think the last one will be asteroid mining and lunar mining.
So we're talking about
10 years.
5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years for the asteroids, 3 to 5 years for space data centers.
The theme of this conference is capital in motion. What does it mean for you and your business?
It couldn't be more relevant for us and our business. There's about to be a $75 billion injection of capital into SpaceX in the IPO, and then probably a $400-500 billion capital outflow from SpaceX with distribution of shares to LPs, with just liquidation from various VC funds. All of that capital is going to go back into the space industry, because you're giving cash to people who already have a propensity to invest in space. They've already made money in space, and they'll be looking for the next places to put their cash. So we're talking about on the order of $500 billion worth of fresh capital that can be deployed in the space industry over the next few years, purely because of the SpaceX IPO.
Philip, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.